The Unpaid Ledger, Episode 10, The Assessor. Chapter 1, Plates. Derek showed up at 7 in the morning with coffee and bad news. Not the good kind of bad news, where you find out the thing you were worried about is actually a slightly different thing, and now you have a new problem, but at least the old one's gone. The kind where everything you suspected turns out to be true, plus a little extra you hadn't thought of yet. Harmon Kessler Associates, he said, setting a paper cup on my kitchen counter. Black coffee, no sugar. Derek remembered things like that. Private security firm, incorporated out of Hartford. 7 years in operation, 60-plus employees, specializing in corporate protection and asset monitoring. I took the coffee, hot enough to scald. Derek didn't believe in any other temperature. The plates from the cemetery, I said, both vehicles, sedan and SUV, registered to Harmon Kessler's operational fleet. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd been up since 4 a.m. and was annoyed about what he'd found. They don't come cheap, Sam. We're talking 6 figures a year for a 2-unit surveillance team, round the clock. And their client list isn't public, but I pulled what I could through some old contacts. Bureau adjacent? Adjacent is generous. They've done contract work for 3 federal agencies, 2 state attorney general offices, and at least 1 private foundation that shows up in bureau funding disclosures. He paused. They're the kind of firm you hire when you want professional surveillance that can't be traced to your office. Plausible deniability with a nice suit. Eddie was sitting on the arm of the couch watching Derek. 7 years of being dead had made him very good at reading what people didn't say. So Leland's got private security on retainer, I said. The coffee was too hot, but I drank it anyway because standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning learning how deep the money went required caffeine. That's not bureau budget. That's not anybody's budget, not on an auditor's salary. Derek's jaw worked. Whoever's funding Leland, they've been at it for years. 7 at least, based on when Harmon Kessler incorporated. Same year as the river. If they had 2 units at Elmwood, I said, setting down the cup, what else were they watching? Everything. Derek said it flat, the way he said things that were both obvious and terrible. Your apartment, my warehouse, Marcus's shop. If they've been running 2-unit brackets for any length of time, they've mapped our patterns. Who goes where, when, how often? The burner phone, I said. Miriam, I gave it to you clean. No digital trail. But if they've got your building under physical surveillance. He trailed off. I pulled my own phone out and called the burner. 3 rings. 4. Voicemail. A generic automated greeting, no name. I hung up without leaving a message. She's not answering, I said. Derek didn't react. Just watched me with the patience of a man who'd spent 8 years in the bureau and knew what silence after a missed call usually meant. My phone buzzed. Not the burner callback. A text from Marcus. She called me 2 hours ago. Come when you can. I grabbed my jacket. Eddie was already at the door. She called Marcus, I said to Derek, heading for the stairs. I'll drive. He was already past me, keys in hand. We didn't talk on the way to Second Chances. The radio was off. The morning was gray and cold. Early February in Ashford. The sky flat and non-committal. Derek drove precise, checking mirrors every 30 seconds, aware of every vehicle within 3 blocks. 2 blocks from Marcus's shop, Eddie spoke from the back seat. Silver Honda. Been behind us since your street. Derek didn't look at the mirror. I see it. Not Harmon Kessler, Eddie continued. Wrong vehicle class, rental plates. Miriam's? I asked. Maybe, Derek said. He pulled into the alley behind Second Chances, and the silver Honda kept going. Didn't slow, didn't turn, just kept driving north on Walker Street. Eddie watched it go. Or maybe someone else entirely. Second Chances was closed. The sign in the window said back at 10, but the back door was unlocked. Marcus was expecting us. We went in through the stockroom, past shelves of ordinary antiques that were anything but ordinary, and found him in the back room where the silver vessel used to live. The vessel was still there, empty now, sitting on the workbench like a monument to a problem we'd solved 2 days ago. Marcus was in his armchair reading, glasses on, a cup of tea cooling beside him. Vest buttoned correctly this time, but his eyes were tired. "Young man," he said to me, and then, "Mr. Wade," to Derek. Last names. Marcus only used last names when he was being careful. Chapter 2, 51. "She called at 4:12 this morning," Marcus said, setting his glasses on the arm of the chair. "The burner phone. She was driving." "Where?" I pulled up a stool. Derek stood by the door, back to the wall. Old habits. "She didn't say, but there was road noise. Highway, not city streets." Marcus folded his hands. "The audit came back early, Sam." My stomach dropped. "How early?" 51 hours, not 72. He let that settle. Rhodes pushed it through on an expedited track. Called in a favor, from the sound of it. Someone high enough to override the standard review period. 51 hours. Miriam had been expecting 3 days. She'd gotten barely 2. "What did they find?" Derek asked from the door. Marcus recounted it clipped, professional. The facts laid out like evidence because that's what they were. 23 classified placement records accessed over 6 months. He paused, picked up his teacup, set it down without drinking. Every single one connected to cases involving Rhodes's network of dirty adjusters. No legitimate bureau justification for any of them. No case numbers, no supervisor authorization, no paper trail that would hold up under review. "Clean," Derek said, his voice hard. "That's a clean hit. It's exactly what Rhodes wanted." Marcus looked at me over the rim of his teacup. "The audit doesn't show why she accessed those files. It doesn't show what she found. Just a pattern of unauthorized access to classified records. And that's all the Bureau needs." "Criminal referral," I said. 12 hours, maybe less. Marcus sipped his tea. "She said she copied what she could before her access was revoked. A thumb drive. Everything she'd been building for the past 6 months." The room was quiet except for the ticking of a clock on the wall. One of Marcus's. Probably older than the building. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Going to ground." Her words. Marcus set the tea down. "She burned the burner phone after she called me. Said she'd make contact again through a dead drop we arranged. Refused to say where she was heading." "Smart," Derek said. "If we don't know, we can't give it up." Eddie drifted across the room, stopped near the empty silver vessel, ran his hand along the surface without touching it, a habit he had with objects that had once been dangerous. "She's an auditor going underground with stolen classified files. The Bureau won't just fire her. They'll hunt her." "Yes," Marcus agreed, looking directly at the spot where Eddie's voice came from. "They will." The clock on the wall ticked. Marcus's tea cooled. Nobody rushed to fill the silence. I sat with that for a moment. Miriam Tate, gray suits and silver pins, and the kind of competence that made you nervous when she was on the other side. She'd walked into my office months ago, cracked her mask just enough to show something real underneath, and asked for help. Now she was running. And the thing about running was that it changed people, even the ones who were good at it. "The thumb drive," I said. "She said she'd get it to us?" "She said she'd get it to you, specifically." Marcus studied me. "She trusts you, Sam. Against her better judgment, I suspect. But she trusts you." "She trusts that I'll use it," I said, which wasn't the same thing at all. "The dead drop," Derek said, moving to the table. "All business now, the emotional processing filed away for later or never." "When and where?" Marcus described it. "A public library branch on the east side. A specific shelf in the reference section. A book with a hollowed interior that Marcus had made himself years ago for exactly this kind of contingency. Miriam knew about it because Marcus had told her about it 2 weeks ago, when the road situation first started accelerating. "You planned for this," I said, looking at Marcus. "I planned for the possibility." He picked up his glasses, put them on, took them off again. "When someone in Miriam's position starts pulling threads, there are really only 2 outcomes. Either the threads lead nowhere and she goes back to her desk, or they lead somewhere and she can't go back at all. And you didn't think to mention this dead drop arrangement to anyone?" "It wasn't mine to share, young man." Quiet. Final. Fair enough. I let it go. Derek was already thinking ahead. The library. Is it watched? Not by anyone I'm aware of, Marcus said. But given what we learned at Elmwood, that assessment may need updating. Leland sensors, I said. Eddie and I had talked about this the night before, lying awake in the dark while the gray space frequency hummed. She doesn't need eyes on the library. She doesn't need a mole in our group. She's got citywide ledger sensors that can track cost movement, and she's been studying my patterns for 7 years. Derek looked at me. Explain. Every time I move costs, her sensors pick it up. She can track where I go, which problems I'm working on, what I'm likely to do next. She doesn't need to follow me. She just needs to predict me. I ran a hand through my hair. The Elmwood surveillance wasn't a leak. It was pattern analysis. She knew the vessel was active. She knew Marcus would call me. She knew I'd go wherever the problem was. The room processed that. Marcus sat very still in his chair. Derek's expression didn't change, but his shoulders shifted, resettling, recalculating. Then every move we've made has been observed, Derek said. Not observed. Predicted. A small distinction. An important one. She can't see inside buildings, can't read our texts, but she can see the ledger ripples and connect the dots. Which means, Eddie said from the corner, the library pickup needs to happen without Sam doing any adjusting anywhere near it. No cost work, no pushes, nothing that registers on her grid. Just a man picking up a book, I said. Just a man picking up a book, Eddie agreed. How hard can that be? Chapter 3. The Shelf. The Ashford East Branch Library was a squat brick building from the 70s that had survived 3 rounds of budget cuts and 2 floods. The carpet had given up. The fluorescent lights buzzed like they were running on spite and municipal stubbornness. The reference section, when I found it, had the heavy quiet of a room nobody had argued in for decades. I went alone. Derek stayed in his truck 2 blocks east, watching the street. Eddie came with me because Eddie always came with me. That was the deal. It was mid-morning. The library was mostly empty. A few retirees in the newspaper section, a young woman with headphones at the computers, a librarian restocking returns with the focused determination of someone who took the Dewey Decimal System personally. The reference section was in the back, floor-to-ceiling shelves, the kind nobody used anymore because the internet existed. I walked in casually, browsing, pulling out a book on regional geography, and flipping through it like I had all the time in the world. Eddie scouted ahead, drifted through the stacks, checking sightlines, looking for anyone who shouldn't be there. Clear, he said when he came back. Just us and a very committed librarian. She's been reshelving the same cart for 20 minutes. Dedication like that deserves a raise. The reference section was deep. Narrow aisles, low ceilings, dead quiet. The fluorescent tube above the 3rd row was out, which gave that section a dimness that worked in my favor. I found the shelf Marcus had described. 3rd row from the left, 2nd shelf from the bottom. Between a bound atlas of Ashford County circa 1952 and a directory of local historical societies that hadn't been updated since Reagan's first term. The book was unremarkable, a thick volume on municipal water management. No human being had voluntarily opened it in decades. Marcus had hollowed it out years ago, lined the interior with thin felt, and put it back. A dead drop disguised as the most boring book in the building. I pulled it out. Heavy. Heavier than it should have been. Something was inside. I opened it at the table in the back corner, shielding the hollowed interior with my body. Inside, wrapped in a cloth napkin from what looked like a highway rest stop, a thumb drive. Silver. No markings. And a folded piece of paper. The note was in Miriam's handwriting. Small, precise. Every letter formed with the same attention she brought to everything. 23 files. Authorization codes don't match any active personnel. Someone above Rhodes. Be careful. Below that, in different ink added later. Thank you for the phone. I'm sorry I couldn't use it longer. I pocketed the drive and the note. Put the book back on the shelf. Exact position. Left edge flush with the atlas. Top of the spine aligned with the directory. Brushed my hands on my jacket. Walked back through the stacks at a normal pace, pausing once to flip through a book on local architecture. maintaining the fiction of casual browsing for anyone who might be watching. The librarian was at the circulation desk now. She glanced up as I passed, then went back to her work. I nodded. She didn't nod back. Fair enough. Outside, the air was cold. The sky had committed to nothing. Gray, flat, the kind of February afternoon that felt like the weather had given up. Eddie was quiet until we were back in my car. Then, she's gone, Sam. She's underground. That's not the same thing. It's close enough. He was in the passenger seat looking straight ahead. An auditor on the run with stolen files. The Bureau doesn't let that go. They won't stop looking. And when they find her, they won't find her. Miriam Tate spent 15 years inside the Bureau. She knows how they search. She knows how to not be found. She also spent 15 years being the kind of person who follows rules. Going underground isn't following rules. It's a different skill set. He was right. I didn't say so. I started the car and drove to Derek's position, where his truck was parked facing the library's front entrance with a clear view of every approach. Clean, I said through his window. He held up his phone. On the screen, a photo of a car parked half a block from the library. Gray sedan, tinted windows, Ashford plates. That pulled in 8 minutes after you went inside. Sat there the whole time. Left 30 seconds after you came out. I stared at the photo. Harmon Kessler? Different vehicle. Different plates. But same behavior. He pocketed the phone. They're not tracking costs, Sam. They're tracking you. Old-fashioned surveillance. Someone following your car. The sensor theory and the physical surveillance. Both. Leland wasn't choosing between methods. She was using all of them. We need to look at what's on that drive, I said. Derek nodded once. Not at your apartment. Not at mine. April? I said. Chen? Derek raised an eyebrow. The only visible sign of surprise I'd ever seen from him. She's got an apartment the surveillance team doesn't know about. She's not in any of Leland's files. She entered our circle through a client referral, not through bureau channels. And she's the best researcher I've ever met. You trust her with this? I trust her brain. I paused. And she's earned it. Derek considered that for exactly 2 seconds. Call her. I called April. She picked up on the first ring. Sam? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need your research brain. Tonight. That's exactly what people say when something is very wrong. A pause. Keyboard clicking. I'm off at 6. What do you need? A quiet space, I said. A laptop that's never been connected to anything bureau-related in about 4 hours. My apartment. I'll order food. Another pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was careful. This is about Miriam, isn't it? Yeah. April went quiet for a beat. Is she okay? She's underground. Silence. The keyboard stopped. I'll make it 5 hours, April said. Bring everything. Chapter 4. The Code. April's apartment was in a converted warehouse on the south side, 4th floor, accessible by a freight elevator that rattled like it was filing a complaint with every trip. The space was small but organized. Bookshelves covering 2 walls, a desk with 3 monitors, papers sorted into labeled folders that were themselves sorted into labeled boxes. Research lived here. You could feel it in the air like humidity. She'd cleared the desk. 1 laptop, screen up, no network connection. She'd pulled the Ethernet cable and disabled the wireless before I arrived. A pot of coffee and takeout containers that smelled like Thai food. Derek didn't come. We'd agreed. The fewer people who knew April's address, the better. He was running his own assignment, photographing every vehicle within 3 blocks of my building, Marcus's shop, and his warehouse. Building a surveillance map. Countermeasures. Eddie settled in the corner near the bookshelf, watching. Show me, April said, her hands already moving toward the laptop. I gave her the thumb drive. The files opened clean. 23 case records, each one a bureau placement file with full documentation. Client name, target name, assigned adjuster, placement date, authorization code, follow-up notes. The kind of paperwork the Bureau generates for every official cost placement. The paper trail that keeps the system honest, or at least keeps it documented. April read through the first 3 files in silence, her eyes moving fast. Pattern recognition, data analysis, raw information turning into architecture. April was built for this. These are all dirty placements, she said, not looking up. Costs moved on to innocent targets. Same structure as the Nina Santos case. Wealthy client, clean adjuster, disposable target. 23 of them, I said from the couch. Over 6 months of bureau records. But the placements themselves span 8 years. She pulled up a spreadsheet, started cross-referencing. The assigned adjusters, I recognize some of these names. Vincent Cobb, that's the one from Nina's case, died of a heart attack 2 months after the placement. And Raymond Marsh, Kevin's uncle, the one with the pocket watch, also dead. Pauline Vickers, she was on the collector's list. April's fingers moved faster. Sam, 5 of these 23 assigned adjusters are dead, all within 6 months of completing their placement. All natural causes on paper. Clean up, Eddie said from the corner. Use them, then eliminate the evidence. April didn't flinch at Eddie's voice. She'd gotten used to it over the past few months, though she still looked slightly to the left of where he actually was. But that's not the interesting part. She pulled up a column of data. Every placement has an authorization code, standard bureau procedure. A senior auditor has to sign off on each placement. But these codes, she trailed off, typed something, stared at the screen. April. The authorization codes don't match any active auditor on staff. She turned the laptop toward me. I cross-referenced against the bureau personnel directory that Miriam included in the files. Current staff, retired staff, deceased staff. None of them match. These placements were approved by someone who doesn't officially exist. The room got quiet. Even the freight elevator stopped rattling. A ghost account, I said. Not exactly. April was in the zone now, her eyes bright, her hands moving, pulling up organizational charts and bureau regulations that Miriam had also copied. The code format corresponds to a specific bureau role. It's in the charter. She found the page. Special Assessor. It's a position that was created when the bureau was founded, designed for emergency oversight, someone with authority to approve placements outside normal channels, direct access to the case system, no supervisor review required, and nobody holds the position. Nobody has held it in over a decade. The last official special assessor retired in 2012. She pointed to the screen. But someone has been using the credentials, continuously, for 8 years. 23 placements that we know of. Probably more that Miriam didn't get to before they locked her out. I looked at the data on the screen. 23 files, 5 dead adjusters. 8 years of dirty placements, all approved through a position that was supposed to be empty. A floor nobody works on, but someone's been signing purchase orders from it for a decade. Whoever controls those credentials has root access to bureau operations, I said, thinking it through. They can approve placements, redirect investigations, suppress audits, Derek's voice said through the phone. April had set on speaker. He'd been listening. 3 blocks away, sitting in his truck with photographs of surveillance vehicles. That explains a lot. His voice was flat, controlled. 8 years of not knowing why. And now he knew. Derek Wade had tried to stop a placement targeting a 9-year-old boy named Michael Reeves. Rhodes had buried him for it. The boy had died anyway. And now there was an authorization code on that placement. A ghost code, from a position nobody officially held. Derek, I said. I'm fine. He wasn't. Keep going. April kept going. She mapped the authorization codes against the timeline, a spreadsheet on one half of the screen, the bureau charter on the other, her hands alternating between them fast enough to make me tired watching. Okay. April talking to herself, the way she did when she was close to something. The first use of the dormant special assessor credentials shows up 9 years ago, 1 year before Derek's incident with Michael Reeves. The placements started small. Low-profile targets, minor clients, test cases. She pulled up another column. Then they escalated. By year 3, the network was moving significant costs onto innocent people and eliminating the adjusters who did the work. Rhodes is middle management, she said, sitting back from the screen. Her coffee was untouched. She'd forgotten about it entirely. He's running the operational side, assigning adjusters, selecting targets, handling the cleanup. But someone above him is authorizing everything through the special assessor credentials. Someone with enough institutional knowledge to know the position existed and enough access to reactivate it. Leland, Eddie said. Maybe. April shook her head. But the special assessor is a bureau position. Internal. Leland operates outside the bureau. Private resources, her own network. If she controlled the credentials, it would mean she has someone inside. At the top? Or she was inside, I said, before she was outside. The window faced south, old warehouse district, streetlights starting to flicker on as the afternoon died. Somewhere out there, Miriam was running. Somewhere out there, Leland's surveillance team was photographing my car. And somewhere in the Bureau's own infrastructure, a ghost was approving placements that got people killed. April, I said, not turning from the window. Yeah? You're in this now. All the way. The surveillance, the Bureau, Leland, all of it. I've been in this since Nina Santos. Her voice was steady. You don't get to bring me in halfway, Sam. She was right. She'd earned this weeks ago. The Elmwood surveillance, I said, and told her everything. The Harmon Kessler vehicles, the gray space visitors, Eddie's observations about the old presences in the cemetery, the frequency on the radio, the dead drop at the library, and the fact that someone had followed me there. April listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Okay, she said. So what do we do? We find out who's holding the special assessor credentials, and we do it without Leland's sensors picking up a single cost. Chapter 5. The Garage. The next morning, the dead drop book at the library had been moved. Not taken. Moved. From the second shelf to the third. 6 inches to the right, slotted between different books than before. Someone had pulled it out, examined it, and put it back. Not in the right spot. I noticed because I'd memorized the position when I returned it. Marcus had taught me that always note the exact placement. Left edge flush with the atlas. Top of the spine aligned with the directory. Now it was offset. Tilted. The atlas had been shifted too. Pushed a 1/4 inch toward the wall. Someone had removed the dead drop book and nudged everything when they replaced it. The book was empty. I'd taken the drive and the note, but whoever moved it now knew the dead drop existed. They knew the hollowed interior. They knew someone had been using the Ashford East Branch Library reference section as a mail drop, and they knew which shelf. The gray sedan from yesterday could have followed me here, watched the reference section, come back after hours. Or Harmon Kessler could have had someone inside the whole time. Or Leland's sensors had picked up something I didn't even know I was radiating. 3 options. No way to know which. I put the book back where I'd found it. No point fixing the position now, and walked out. The librarian from yesterday wasn't at the desk. A different one today. Younger. Didn't look up. I texted Marcus from my car using shorthand we'd developed over the years. Shelf moved. Compromised. His reply came in 30 seconds. Understood. We'll arrange alternative. That was Marcus. No panic. No questions. Just adjustment. The man had been operating in gray areas since before I was born. Eddie was agitated. Not visibly. Eddie didn't do visible agitation, but he was flickering. Subtle, barely perceptible shifts in his outline that I'd learned to read over 7 years. Someone's inside our operational pattern, he said. The dead drop was clean yesterday. You used it 12 hours ago, and now it's been found. Physical surveillance, I said, pulling out of the library parking lot. The gray sedan Derek spotted. They followed me here, watched me go to the reference section, went back after hours and found the book. Which means the library's burned. Which means everything I touch is burned. I merged onto traffic, unless I can move without them seeing me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Not a text this time. Coordinates. A parking garage on the east side of Ashford. Nothing else. I stared at the screen. The last time I'd received coordinates from an unknown number was never. That wasn't how my contacts operated. Marcus used texts. Derek used calls. April used the group chat. Miriam was underground. Trap, Eddie said, reading over my shoulder. Maybe. Definitely trap. Maybe definitely, I said, and turned east anyway. I called Derek, told him the coordinates. He said he'd be there in 15 minutes, one level up. Same as always. I told him about the library. He said 3 words: burning everything down. Not a threat. An operational assessment. The surveillance net was tightening, and our infrastructure was being dismantled one piece at a time. The parking garage was 5 stories of poured concrete on the edge of the business district, half empty at midday. The entrance ramp was lit yellow and humming with bad ventilation, the walls sweating condensation. Somewhere above, a car alarm beeped twice and stopped. The building absorbed it. I parked on 3, between a minivan and a pickup truck, and walked to the coordinates, northeast corner, near the stairwell. The concrete walls were sweating. Cold air trapped moisture. My footsteps echoed in the empty space, bouncing off low ceilings and coming back at me from directions that didn't quite make sense. Nobody there. Eddie swept the level, drifted through parked cars, around support columns, past the elevator bank. Empty. But he paused near the stairwell door. His form sharpened, full attention, reading something in the ledger. There's a cost residue here. Fresh. Someone with active ledger presence was in this spot within the last hour. Adjuster? Auditor. Eddie's form solidified, his attention sharpening. The signature's different, more structured, bureau-trained. Not Miriam. Miriam was underground and wouldn't send coordinates from an unknown number to a phone she knew was being tracked. A door opened on the level above. Footsteps. Measured, deliberate, descending the stairs. Not hurrying, not hiding. The kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who knew exactly where they were going and had planned how long it would take to get there. I put my back to the nearest support column. Instinct. Nothing between me and the stairwell door but 20 feet of open concrete. Eddie positioned himself at my right shoulder. Solid. Alert. The stairwell door pushed open. The woman who walked through was in her 50s. Gray coat, dark hair cut short. She moved like someone who was used to being in charge of every room she entered and found the habit tiresome. She stopped 10 feet from me. Studied me. Not casually, the long, measured look of someone seeing up close what they'd only studied from a distance. "Samuel Vance," she said. Not a question. Eddie's form went rigid beside me. The temperature dropped. Not dramatically, not costs pooling. This was Eddie, reacting to something I couldn't see, but he could. "You're going to want to tell me who you are," I said, my hands in my jacket pockets, my weight on the balls of my feet. "Ready to move?" "My name is Dr. Catherine Leland," she said, "and I've been waiting 7 years to have this conversation." Chapter 6. The Door. She didn't look like a monster. That was the first thing. After 7 years of Leland being a name in files, a shadow behind operations, a voice on a riverbank saying, "You're going to be very useful, Samuel Vance," she looked like someone's department chair. Composed. Professional. Gray coat over a dark sweater. No jewelry. Shoes meant for walking, not for show. She also didn't look like someone who was afraid of me. Interesting. She was standing in a parking garage with a man she'd been manipulating for 7 years and a ghost she'd helped create, and she looked like she was about to chair a department meeting. "Eddie," I said, without looking at him. "I see her." His voice was low, tight. Ledger presence like nothing I've ever read. She's carrying so much structured cost data she practically glows. "Dr. Leland," I said, "you could have called." I could have, but I find that first meetings set the tone for everything that follows, and I didn't want ours to start with a phone call you'd decline. She clasped her hands in front of her, patient. Like this was a faculty meeting and she had all afternoon. "You found the dead drop." That was faster than I expected. Cold settled in my chest. "You moved the book." I moved the book. No apology, no justification. I wanted to see what Auditor Tate considered worth running for. The answer is interesting. 23 files and an authorization code that shouldn't exist. She tilted her head slightly. "You have questions." "I have a lot of things," I said. Questions is maybe 4th on the list. Leland's expression didn't change. Behind anger, suspicion, and the strong desire to walk away. Something like that. And yet you came when I sent the coordinates. She studied me, which tells me exactly what I already knew about you. Eddie moved, not toward Leland, between us, positioning himself as a barrier that she couldn't see but could certainly sense, given what Eddie had said about her ledger presence. You were at the river, I said. 7 years ago. You watched Eddie die. You watched me tear a hole in the ledger, and you said I'd be useful. All true. 2 words. No hesitation. The parking garage echoed them back. You planted costs on Eddie, the booby-trapped structure, the craftsmanship-level work. That was your people. For the first time, something shifted behind her eyes. Not guilt, not denial. Something more complicated. Also true, though the execution was handled by a specialist who is no longer with us. Because you cleaned up after yourself, like the dead adjusters in Miriam's files. Use them. Eliminate the evidence. Because some tools break when they're used for their intended purpose. She said it quietly, without satisfaction. I wanted to hit her. My hands were shaking in my pockets, a fine tremor that had nothing to do with cost absorption or gray space frequencies. Just rage. 7 years of it, compressed into a parking garage encounter with a woman who admitted everything like she was confirming a shipping address. Eddie spoke. Why now? Leland looked at the space where his voice came from. She could sense him. Her eyes tracked approximately 3 feet to the left of where he actually was, but she knew he was there. Because the special assessor credentials will lead you to my associate inside the bureau, and I'd rather you heard the context from me than from the paperwork. She took a breath. And because your ability to absorb costs without entity formation changes everything I've spent 7 years planning. The conduit model, I said. Cross told me. You built a plan around costs accumulating until critical mass, a weapon you could aim. Something flickered across her face. Irritation, maybe, that Cross had gotten there first. Yes, and you broke it by being something I didn't predict. She looked at me with something that might have been respect. I'm here because I need a new plan, and I'd rather build it with you than against you. The parking garage was quiet, concrete, and exhaust. The distant sound of traffic from the street below. Eddie's form was still between us, solid and unmoving. That's a hell of a pitch, I said, considering you killed my best friend to make me useful. Yes, she held my gaze. It is. I could have walked away. Should have, probably. But walking away from the woman who had all the answers was its own kind of stupidity. And I'd used up my stupidity budget for the decade. The special assessor, I said. Who? Someone you've met. Someone who believes they're acting for the greater good of the ledger system. Someone who will burn Miriam Tate to protect the operation. She paused. I'll give you the name, but first, I need to know something. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm always in a position to negotiate, said without arrogance. Just fact. What I need to know is simple. The gray space. The tier you made 7 years ago. Something has changed in it recently. Something that wasn't there before. Eddie went still. Absolutely still. The kind of stillness that meant he was listening with everything he had to something I couldn't hear. What do you know about the visitors? I asked, and watched her face. Nothing. No reaction. No surprise. Either she knew already, or she'd spent 7 years practicing that expression. Both options were bad. I know that the gray space is developing properties I didn't anticipate, she said carefully. I know that consecrated ground accelerated something, and I know that the ledger itself is responding to the change. She met my eyes. I also know that whatever is happening in there, you and Eddie are the only ones who can navigate it, which is why I'm here instead of continuing to observe from a distance. Touching? Eddie said. Really? I'm moved. Leland almost smiled. Almost. The name, I said. The special assessor. I'll send it to the number I contacted you from. Tonight. She turned toward the stairwell. I want you to understand, Samuel. What's happening in the gray space is bigger than my plans. Bigger than the Bureau. And the entities that are gathering there don't know the difference between a weapon and a wound. She pushed the stairwell door open and stopped, looking back. Your friend, Mr. Wade? He's been running my vehicle plates. Tell him Harmon Kessler Associates answers to me. They've been documenting, not interfering. That changes today. As of now, the surveillance is lifted. She stepped through the door, then paused, head tilted, like she was listening to something. Her eyes moved to the exact spot where Eddie stood. Not 3 feet to the left this time. The exact spot. The door closed behind her. Her footsteps faded up the stairs. Eddie and I stood in the parking garage. Concrete, exhaust, cold. She's lying, Eddie said. About something. Not everything, but something. Yeah, I said. And she's scared. He was looking at the stairwell door she'd disappeared through. Whatever she saw on the gray space data, it scares her. Good. I walked back to my car, got in, sat there for a minute with the engine off and my hands on the steering wheel. Eddie in the passenger seat, both of us staring at the concrete wall in front of us. She admitted it, Eddie said. About the river, about my costs. She just admitted it. Yeah. No apology, no justification. Just also true. Like she was confirming a shipping address. I stared at the concrete wall ahead of us. That's what 7 years of planning looks like. The feelings got factored out a long time ago. Eddie was quiet for a moment. Then, I want to hate her. You can? I do. He looked at his hands, translucent, flickering at the edges. I also want the name she's offering. Me too, I said. That's the problem. I started the car. The radio came on. The station I kept tuned to nothing, volume low. The one that picked up things it shouldn't. Static. Then, underneath, the frequency. The gray space, humming. Louder than yesterday. Louder than last night. Getting closer to something I didn't have a name for. Eddie's form flickered, in sync. The door opening from the other side. I pulled out of the garage and drove south toward my apartment, toward whatever was waiting there. The sky was dark. February in Ashford. The kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there until it was done with you. Tomorrow, April would dig deeper into the special assessor codes. Derek would map the surveillance net. Marcus would establish a new dead drop. Miriam would keep running, and the Bureau would keep hunting. And somewhere in between, a woman in a gray coat would decide how much truth to offer and how much to keep. And the gray space would keep waking up. Whatever was in there, whatever had noticed the door, it wasn't going to stop just because we hadn't figured it out yet. My phone buzzed once. The unknown number. Not the name. Not yet. Just 2 words. Soon, Samuel. I kept driving,